Beijing has brought in new land border laws that say the border is sacred and inviolable. It calls for taking measures to safeguard China's territorial integrity and land boundary and directs the army, the Chinese PLA, to combat and prevent any violation. India is deeply concerned. Is China trying to justify its actions of unilaterally trying to alter the line of actual control in April-May 2020? Both sides as of now are heavily deployed for the second winter in the high altitude areas at the LAC in Ladakh and all the way to Arunachal Pradesh. Abhishek Bhalla gets you our top story. As the India-China standoff at the line of actual control in Ladakh enters the 19th month, Beijing has brought in new land border laws that have led to apprehension that China is trying to justify its actions along the LAC. The National Land Boundary Law was adopted at the 13th National People's Congress of China on the 23rd of October and approved by the Chinese President Xi Jinping the same day. The new Chinese land laws state that the borders are sacred and inviolable. The new law defines leadership system and responsibilities in border areas, gives a clear mandate for military and civilian authorities in border areas. It demarcates national land boundaries, defense and management. It enables better coordination, regulation and strengthening of Chinese border management. A Chinese government spokesperson clarified that the October 23 land boundary law does not affect China's compliance with existing treaties related to national land boundary. China insists the law does not alter China's position on boundary issues. The new Chinese land laws will come into effect from the 1st of January 2022.
The law has clear provisions on China's compliance with treaties on land boundary affairs, international cooperation with its land neighbors and handling of land boundary affairs in accordance with the principle of equality and mutual benefit. It will not affect China's fulfillment of existing border-related treaties it has signed or change China's existing border management and cooperation with its land neighbors. Nor will it change China's positions and propositions on relevant border-related issues.
The new Chinese land boundary law has 7 chapters and 62 articles. India is viewing the Chinese law with some apprehension, given China's attempt to unilaterally alter the LAC in April-May 2020. The initial assessment is China is attempting to justify its April-May 2020 actions through the new law. Civil administration in China is also now tasked to establish model border defense villages which are coming up opposite Arunachal Pradesh, and some civilian Chinese tents pitched on Indian territory are also a matter of concern in eastern Ladakh.
This is yet another way of Chinese aggressive posturing along the LAC. Under the garb of the new land border law, the Chinese will settle the villagers, who in turn will push the animals, and they themselves might cross and want to come onto our side of the LAC under the garb of the new land border law.
Analysts say the new law is also a signal of the hardening Chinese position along the LAC.
With this own sort of self-goal mechanism they are creating, while it's fostering their economic and socio development and also military development in around the borders, it is also giving the handle to countries like India to ascertain these borders finally, and to be able to agree to where we agree mutually, and to be able to disagree and take appropriate actions where we don't agree. So clarity will come about with this border policy of China.
After 13 rounds of Corps Commander level talks to address the India-China standoff ended in a deadlock, the new land laws are expected to make future negotiations even tougher.
The new border laws to be adopted by China seem to be another ploy for aggressive military posturing at the borders. India has already raised concerns that this could be used to formalize enhancement of military infrastructure and ensuring that China continues with an aggressive mindset at the borders like it has been doing for the last 1.5 years. Abhishek Bhalla in New Delhi for India Today.
So is this just aggressive posturing, or is there a deeper and a more sinister design? Are India-China relations headed for a deeper freeze? Are there also apprehensions of skirmishes along the line of actual control in times to come? Now, two of the finest voices studying China closely for decades join me on India First. Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma commanded the Leh Corps in Ladakh. In fact, he dealt directly with an earlier India-China standoff at the LAC. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash has served both in China and in Pakistan, studies the region very closely. Gentlemen, privileged to have you on the show. General Sharma, if I may, the Chinese deployment and the new China border law. Is China trying to justify its actions of April-May 2020? When you see the current Chinese build-up and deployment, in your appreciation, is this to hold ground or is it to take territory?
What is happening inside China is very interesting. It is not normal. This is, I would say, PRC 3.0. After the Maoist era and the Deng era, there is a Xi Jinping era, which is totally different than what was in the Deng Xiaoping era. In this year alone, they passed a Coast Guard law in January. And subsequently, in April, May, they passed a maritime law. Maritime law also, similarly, they made jurisdiction issues. Means, jurisdiction including the EEZ, which is not supposed to be included. So there is a systemic happening over larger numbers: cyber security law, national security law, data law. There are a whole lot of laws being produced in China in the course of last year and a half. That's a systemic change happening. It's a new environment altogether. When you take this environment, then there is a land law which came up following what happened in the maritime law, which came, which was effective some time ago. Now, if you see the land law, of course, the issue is, where is the border? Which boundary are we talking about?
Exactly.
We don't have a decided border and boundary between us and China. Every time we decide a boundary and a border, how can we talk about having a border law and sovereignty and territorial integrity when all is nebulous in character?
Absolutely.
Nebulous character. How do we say which land border or boundary are we talking about?
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, what do you make of the new Chinese land border law? What is China's aim? What do you make of the timing? One, is he trying to justify his actions? Two, when the LAC is not decided, when the boundary issue is not decided, how can they say what boundary will they protect?
Gaurav, good evening. They have just complicated the boundary issue, and it is not just justifying their action in eastern Ladakh. But here is the issue. If I have to cut to the chase, the issue is the following. Boundary-related issues are two. One is territorial dispute, which we are currently facing, and the other is demarcation of boundary, which we have been kind of talking to them for the last so many years. What the land law does is to give China the discretion. They have basically appropriated the discretion of presenting a territorial dispute as a sovereignty issue, Gaurav. That is the crux of the matter. Now, the moment you give it the garb of a sovereignty issue, you harden your stance and say that, look, this is a question of sovereignty. I mean, so they have toughened their stances. They have made it, the negotiations more complicated. And if I were to add, what they have done is they have taken a leaf out of the American book, where in the US also, you bring in a domestic legislation which takes precedence over other agreements, covenants, international bilateral treaties, and say, well, this is our law. So this is the aggressive stance of China. It's a serious matter. It goes much beyond the current territorial issue or the standoff that we are facing, Gaurav.
General Sharma, last year when China deployed its forces, the number of troops and formations that were deployed to to the current level of deployment and infrastructure build up both in Tibet and in Xinjiang? Is it defensive? Is it offensive? Or are they sending a signal they've done what they wanted to do, perhaps whether it's the 1959 claim line that they wanted to achieve, and now they're saying accept this as the de facto either LAC or border, accept this, then they'll start nibbling further?
Okay, two parts of your question here. First is the forces deployed in this area. Firstly, opposite Ladakh, whatever the forces have come from Xinjiang and they are not from Tibet. So there is a separate part of it. Now, the forces which have come from Xinjiang, which could be more, I mean, I read into the statements given of late by various high dignitaries, they will be larger than what we said earlier about 2 divisions, if they're 3 or 3.5 or 4, whatever. And they have come in a semi-permanent structure. I think in times to come, they will have permanent stature across in opposite eastern Ladakh, in the areas of Citing or Khotan and other cantonments across there, which are being built and, graduatedly being built in all these areas. So there is a permanence across, which I feel in opposite eastern Ladakh. That kind of permanence is not there opposite Arunachal Pradesh or Uttarakhand Tibet border or Himachal Tibet border. There's a differentiation here. So that's one part of the story. Second part of the question that you're asking is the locus standi of the line of actual control. Now, the line of actual control, especially in eastern Ladakh, I think is now, as it seems after the 13th round of talks, that there is no further movement which is taking place on this discussion here, because whatever the Chinese wanted to achieve in the issues of creating buffer zones or no patrolling zones or moratorium of patrolling have been achieved, and they are happier in what the situation is. There may be other areas which are still ongoing issues existing, like PP15, which is off little distance from Hot Springs, or in Demchok area where there may be issues still holding out. But in the areas where these so-called temporary buffers have been created, Chinese seem to be in a no mood to discuss here and after. So there is a differentiation of the attitude which is evident in the course of last couple of months, last discussion, and I would say so that we have to take this as things come and keep discussing it. It cannot be done. But when he says that there are old treaties and old agreements, I think we should not harp on old agreements and old treaties.
When they don't care,
standing.
absolutely.
There's a little standing on all this. Yeah.
When they don't care about old treaties and agreements. But Ambassador Prakash, 13 rounds of Corps Commander talks ended on a rather harsh note. China did pull back after India's QPQ quid pro quo operations to some degree, but through this law. Is China now sending out a signal that they will not pull back anymore? And like you indicated, will negotiating with China either here or on that entire boundary question be much more difficult in times to come? Point one and point two, when we thought about economic engagement between the two countries, that would make, boundary issues, sorting out boundary issue easier. That doesn't seem to be happening.
When it comes to territorial issue, Gaurav, nothing else matters. If we are to just study the Sino-Japan relations, we will find that there has been so much of economic engagement, so much of assistance provided by Japan. But when it comes to any of the historical issues or territorial issues, they act aggressively. But when it comes to India-China economic ties, despite our efforts, in fact, as you know, the trade this year has been the highest.
Yes.
So, and the trade deficit is ballooning. So even the economic squeeze that we were wanting to put, I will not call it a squeeze, but trying to reduce, that has not happened. Now, as far as Chinese position is concerned, there is clear hardening, at least that is the stance. Chinese, what they say is not important, what they do is important. Now, when they say that they are going to respect all the understandings, etc., and that will not have any bearing, then the simple question is, why did you need this law?
Yes.
So obviously, what they are saying, what they are doing, standard operating procedure. South China Sea, they kept on saying, we are not militarizing it, nothing happened. And then one fine morning, we know what is there. So that is China. I will not say that there is no room for further discussion. There is always room. The 13th round has not made headway, but with Chinese, you need patience with the capital P, Gaurav.
Sure, you need patience with a capital P. You also need power with a bigger capital P, perhaps, because only if we are militarily strong. And General, is that the general appreciation? The stronger we are, the better bargaining power, if at all, will we have. Disengagement, yes, it did take place in some places, but no de-escalation and clearly no induction. On the contrary, the deployment has increased. Their army guards the borders, so that they've made very clear even through this law. Do we have that clarity on our side? Who's protecting our borders? Is it the army? Is it the ITBP? Is it the Ministry of Defense? Or is it the Ministry of Home Affairs?
Okay, leave it, Gaurav. Let the people who matter on ground handle the issue the best they can. There are issues involved regarding the ITBP and the Indian Army, but I think they have fantastic cooperation and coordination at this juncture. Rightly so, like the Border Security Force and 15-16 core zones comes under the army. It would be beneficial in case the ITBP also is brought in the similar format as it's happening in 15-16 core. It should happen on the line of actual control also. But let's allow these things to happen the way it is being negotiated and discussed across at the highest of quarters. And I think this will be able to resolve it. And we are actually, to answer your question simply, we are well prepared. We understand the threats across here. Next 1 year is going to be critical for us, because next 1 year President Xi Jinping will work overtime to make sure that he gets an extension in the 20th National Party Congress, which takes place in month of October, November. So he has to heighten the nationalism in his country. He has to bring about the changes that he bringing about, inequality in the people, and the common prosperity as he talks about. So there are significant changes happening internally in China, and nationalism is very big part of that change. So next 1 year is going to be critical for the Chinese president to get his further 5 years extension, and next 5 years will be even more critical to prove that he's got a rare extension which is not authorized in the constitution, which is now been added on.
No, but to achieve that, is he, in your appreciation, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, willing to sacrifice India-China relations? And could we perhaps see worsening relations with China? Could we also see maybe a short, sharp conflict for that nationalism on his side to get him back in power?
Gaurav, I hope that we do not have conflict. I would genuinely believe that this is not in the interest of either of us, but the fact remains that Xi Jinping wants to go down in history as the most effective ruler, and he wants to, in fact, overshadow even Mao. And to say that, he has rejuvenated the great Chinese nation. Okay. That is the whole objective, and nothing in his estimation will come in the way. When you talk of power, you are absolutely right. Everything is about the comprehensive national power that China believes in, and it is the differential between the comprehensive national power between India and China which is encouraging them to behave the way they do. But we have held fast. We have held firmly. We are going to do what it takes. But yes, the name of the game is economic power, economic power, and economic power.
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Italy. He was welcomed to the chants of shloks and, of course, slogans of Jai Shri Ram, the Shiv mantra at Rome. He paid respects to Mahatma Gandhi. Chants reverberated as Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the community there. He's also made President of the European Union and European Commission. Narendra Modi has become the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Italy since 2009. Listen in.
Sanskrit chanting and a crowd shouting Modi, Modi. Modi, 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 Modi. A rousing welcome for Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Rome for expats and other admirers. Prime Minister's first engagement in Rome was to head to the Piazza Gandhi Memorial to pay respects to Mahatma Gandhi. And that is where a large number of expats gathered to get a glimpse of the Prime Minister as he placed flowers at the bust of Gandhi. The Prime Minister did not disappoint as he freely mixed with people, even talking to a man in Gujarati language.
Though the visit is primarily for a G20 Leaders Summit under Italian presidency, during the visit PM Modi will be having a meeting with PM Draghi. This is going to be their first in-person meeting, though they have recently had a telephonic conversation.
Ahead of the G20 summit on Saturday and Sunday, Modi met the leadership of the European Commission and the European Council. Prime Minister took to social media site Twitter to say he had very satisfying talks in trade, commerce, culture and the environment with the European Union representatives. On Saturday, the Prime Minister will join world leaders at the G20 summit, besides holding a series of bilateral meetings with heads of nations. This G20 summit will be the first in-person meeting of member nations since the outbreak of the pandemic. The summit will discuss the global situation, particularly the need to revive economy. But before the summit, Modi will have an audience with the most powerful man in the Christian world, the Pope Francis. This will be the first time the Prime Minister will be going to the Vatican to meet the Pope. Bureau Report, India Today.
We will continue to get you the latest on this big story. A quick break. On the other side, Sunil Bharti Mittal, the founder and chairman of Bharti Enterprises, in conversation with Udayan Mukherjee on our special show, Business Today.